Hello everyone, I'm Jed Rubenfeld and this is Straight Down the Middle. Well, a couple days ago, the Trump administration fired another bunker-busting bomb at Harvard University, this time trying to block Harvard from enrolling international students. This is just the latest salvo in what's become kind of an attack by the Trump administration on Harvard. In the last month, the administration has done the following things. It has frozen a couple $1 billion in federal funding to Harvard. It's announced that Harvard can no longer get any more grants from the federal government. It's launched numerous serious investigations into Harvard, and it's even initiated the process of revoking Harvard's tax-exempt status. This move, though, blocking Harvard from enrolling international students, may be the most surprising and aggressive move yet. It's sent the university into kind of a panic, not just the school itself, but the some 6,800 international students who've been basically told by the government, look, transfer to another school or else face deportation. One thing you got to understand is that international students, they make up a surprisingly large share of student body enrollment in the Ivy League. At Harvard, it's like 28%, maybe 27%. At Yale, right around the same figure. At Columbia, according to some measures, over 50%. Why is that? Well, because international students tend to be much more likely to pay full freight at these universities than American students. And what is full freight? Well, at Harvard, it's now up to almost $100,000 per student per year, including room and board. So, cutting off Harvard's ability to enroll international students not only blows out a quarter of their student body, but hits them in the pocketbook where it might hurt. Harvard immediately ran to a federal district court and asked for a temporary restraining order, and immediately that federal court granted that temporary restraining order, blocking the Trump administration from acting on or enforcing this latest move. But the court's temporary restraining order didn't say a word about the merits. It just said, hey, we're going to preserve the status quo pending litigation. So, is it legal what the Trump administration has done, this latest move? I got to say something first up front. In my opinion, Harvard, like my own university, Yale, went off the rails a few years ago. Its faculty is ridiculously slanted ideologically in one direction. It's been engaging in racial discrimination. It stopped protecting free speech. At Harvard, one of the most important faculty groups there required diversity statements, vetting, to quote Steven Pinker here, vetting applicants for teaching positions for their willingness to engage in wokobabble. That's how Steven Pinker put it. On top of all that, Harvard appointed as its president a plagiarist, who, by the way, still has a job at Harvard and is collecting some $900,000 a year. Nevertheless, despite all that, the administration's latest move against Harvard is, in my opinion, illegal. Let me explain to you why. Let me walk you through it. You can make up your own minds, but I'll walk you through the legal issues. All right, whenever you look at a move like this by the administration against a school like Harvard, you got to be asking two different kinds of questions. What's the basis in the applicable statutes or regulations for what the administration has done? And second, regardless of that, is what the administration has done constitutional? Those are two very different kinds of questions. Let's take them one at a time. First, the statutory or regulatory question. Well, as usual with federal regulations, it's kind of complicated. The regulation is complex, it's hard to read, but here's the basic story. Every school, in order to enroll international students, in order to get those students visas, has to have a certification from the Student Exchange Visa Program. Now, that program is overseen by the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. One of the things that schools have to do in order to get that certification and to maintain it is to report certain information to the government about their international students. For example, they got to report whether the students are, completing their coursework. They also have to report on these international students' academic status or misconduct that they have engaged in relating to their academic status. Now, it's that last reporting requirement that the administration is saying Harvard has failed to comply with. DHS Secretary Noem wrote a letter to Harvard saying, no, you have not complied with that requirement. We gave you a chance. We asked for the relevant information. You did not supply it to us, and therefore you have forfeited your student exchange visa program certification, and you can't enroll international students anymore. Okay, so what's the deal with that move by Secretary Noem? Is it legal? Well, I got to tell you, her position, what she's saying, is not crazy, but I don't think it's going to hold up in court. Here's why. It looks like the administration is asking for information from Harvard, claiming that it was required to submit information that goes way beyond what the regulations require. For example, Secretary Noem's letter says, hey, Harvard, you got to turn over to us everything you've got on whether your international students engaged in dangerous or threatening activity or engaged in any protest activity. You got to turn over to us any footage you have of any international students engaging in protest activity. Now, all those requests or demands, they might make perfect sense, but it looks like they go beyond what the regulation itself says. The regulation says that schools have to turn over information regarding the students' academic status. That is, like whether they were suspended or put on probation or even expelled for their misconduct. Or, in addition, the schools have to report on any criminal conduct that resulted in a criminal conviction for which the student was disciplined at the school. That's all pretty different from the kinds of demands for information that the administration is making of Harvard. In addition, it looks like Secretary Noem may not have complied with the process. As usual, there's a regulatory process for revoking the certification. It looks arguably like Secretary Noem did not comply with it. Now, I got to tell you, there are counter arguments here. There's an argument that under the regulations, DHS was permitted to ask for information that the schools weren't required by regulation to give them on their own. There's an argument that the normal process for revoking a school's certification might not apply here. These arguments get pretty technical pretty fast. In my opinion, a court is probably not going to side with the government on all of these technical issues. But here's what I want to get to, the constitutional issues, because they're much more fundamental, much more important. Here's the key fact that not enough people are paying attention to. What the administration is doing to Harvard, it hasn't done to any other universities. This is serious business. Now, if the administration had wanted to cover its constitutional tracks, there was a way for it to do it. It would have imposed these reporting requirements that seem to go beyond the letter of the regulation. It would have imposed them on all universities, or all Ivy League universities, or all universities with a substantial number of international students, or all universities with allegations of civil rights violations against them, or it could have created some category and demanded these same reporting requirements from all those universities, and then it could have said, look, if the universities don't comply, we're going to suspend all of their certifications. We're going to revoke all of their certifications. If the university had done anything, if the administration had done anything like that, it could have said, see, we're not singling Harvard out. We're just applying to Harvard the same requirements that we impose on all similarly situated universities, and we're not doing to Harvard anything different from what we do to everybody else. But they didn't do that. To my knowledge, maybe there's information I don't have here, but to my knowledge, Harvard is the only university that has been subjected to these special reporting requirements. Harvard is the only university that has been told it can no longer enroll international students. Harvard is the only university that has gotten this special adverse treatment. Now, that's a big problem. Why is that a big problem? Well, you got to ask yourself why. Why is the administration doing this to Harvard? And the answer is pretty clear. It's because Harvard sued. Look, over the last couple of months, the administration notified numerous prominent universities in the country that they were in danger of losing their federal funding. And the administration said, look, if you don't comply with these demands we have of you to change your curriculum in certain ways, to do something about ideological diversity among your students, among your faculty, other demands too, a lot of other demands, we're going to cut off all your federal funding. So Harvard is just one of many universities who got that kind of notification from the administration. What happened? Well, Columbia cut a deal with the government, trying to keep its funding, said, look, we'll comply with those demands. Just let us keep our funding. Because this funding, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, in Harvard's case, billions, but often hundreds of millions of dollars at these other universities. Many of these other universities, maybe they haven't cut deals yet, but they're engaged in negotiations with the government, trying to avoid a cutoff of their funds. But Harvard sued. Harvard was the one that went to court and said, no, we're not going to comply with your demands. We're suing you. So I got to tell you, that's very powerful evidence that what the administration is doing to Harvard, as opposed to any of these other universities, what it's doing to Harvard is because Harvard sued. In other words, the administration is retaliating against Harvard for suing. And guess what? That's unconstitutional, period. It's called retaliation, and it's a violation of the First Amendment. Now, there's something else that Secretary Noem said in her letter. She said one of the reasons why we're cutting off your certification, which allows you to enroll international students, one of the reasons why we're not going to allow you to enroll international students anymore is because at Harvard you're fostering, you're promoting anti-Hamas sentiment. Now again, that might be you might think a very reasonable thing for the administration to do, but I got to tell you, heinous though promoting anti-Hamas opinion, anti-Hamas sentiment might be, and as vile as, pro-Hamas, as heinous as promoting pro-Hamas sentiment might be, and as vile as pro-Hamas opinion and pro-Hamas sympathies might be, and that's what the administration, that's what Noem said, that you're promoting pro-Hamas sympathies, and that's one of the reasons why we're cutting you off. That's First Amendment protected activity. That's right, promoting pro-Hamas opinion, heinous though it might be, that's protected in our country by the First Amendment. So the government can't take action against a university for engaging in First Amendment protected activity. It can't do it. Again, that's just unconstitutional, period. It's another independent First Amendment violation. Now, everybody knows what the administration's doing here, or what it's trying to do. It's trying to force Harvard back to the negotiating table. It's trying to get Harvard to comply with some of those demands, maybe cut another deal. It's also, importantly, sending a message to every other university out there out in the country saying, look, if you all do what Harvard did, if you don't comply or cut a deal with us, if you sue us, well, you can see what's going to happen to you. We're going to come after you with everything we've got. If you sue us, if you fight us, all hell is going to break loose and rain down on you like no one's ever seen. Well, these are things that the government just can't do. Let me take a step back here. Anybody who's watched this program straight down the middle for a while, you know me. You know I excoriated the state and federal prosecutions of Donald Trump because they were such obvious weaponizations of the legal system to go after the leading candidate, presidential candidate from the other party. Now, that was a direct and profound threat to democracy. That's worse than what's being done by the administration to Harvard right now, much worse. But it's the same kind of unconstitutionality. The government cannot single out, target, and punish anybody, whether it's Donald Trump or Harvard University, for their First Amendment protected activity. You can't do that. Now, I know maybe President Trump might feel like he has a right to do it. He's entitled to do it because it was done so blatantly, so repeatedly to him and his allies. But it's unconstitutional, and it's just got to stop. That's all. I'll see you again next time.